Hello, good morning and welcome. It's Monday, September the 15th. It's Phase 2, Week 3. And this week, we introduce Donald Trump into the mix. What could possibly go wrong now? My name is Sam Coates of Sky News.
And I'm Anne McElvoy from Politico. Welcome to Politics at Sam and Anne's, the podcast that gives you everything you need to know for the day ahead in British politics in around 20 minutes. And we could get the first migrants removed to France today in that one-in, one-out deal. So we're poised for that, at which point I think the question will arise, when does this policy begin acting as a deterrent? If it does.
But all the attention really is going to be on tomorrow. The new Foreign Secretary, Yvette Cooper, will meet Donald Trump off Air Force One when he lands on Tuesday night. She'll be finalising the agenda for the state visit with US Secretary of State Marco Rubio. He's coming just in advance of the president to mop some things up before the man himself arrives.
Got to add my detail here, Sam, that today 80 horses from the Household Cavalry head to Windsor for the final preparation. They get the last checks that they haven't gone lame, which apparently happens even to the best looked after parade horses. And I think there's a metaphor for the political week in there somewhere. So let's crack on with that. We've 2 days of business in the Commons before the recess for the conference season. That's not for almost a month. As you say, what could possibly go wrong? After Tuesday, MPs won't be back in Westminster until Monday, October the 13th. That will potentially provide some respite for the Labour whips, as it means fewer gatherings of all those rather worked up Labour backbenchers.
Talk in a moment about the substance of the fact that actually Keir Starmer is in a massively perilous moment, but it's worth reflecting the recent history of revolts against prime ministers, because actually the Tory years suggest that recess doesn't help as much as it once did, because closed WhatsApp forums in which MPs get ventilated and rub each other up the wrong way and wind each other up can actually be even more toxic for prime ministers. Anyway, we will see whether that happens. It's a long time for a recess right now at this moment of peril. The Commons has also today got the Employment Rights Bill back from the Lords. The Lords inserted lots of pro-business amendments, so number 10 needs to come good on its promise not to water it down. I think number 10 will come good on its promise, despite the rumours, so watch that happen across many hours today.
We'll see Westminster responding to that Tommy Robinson march on Saturday, attended by around 110,000 people, making it one of the largest events of its kind. And we had the spectacle of Elon Musk calling for the dissolution of Parliament and for a change of government in the UK during that far-right rally in London on Saturday. He said violence is coming, speaking in the aftermath of the assassination of Charlie Kirk in the US, adding, "You either fight back or you die." Well, needless to say, Sam, a hugely unhelpful intervention by Musk, whose interest in the UK feels disproportionate but certainly active.
Yeah, I thought it was really important to mention this. Elon Musk, of course, wants a close ally of Donald Trump, who's turning up, so the spotlight even more on him than normal. I'm quite struck. Ed Davey, the Liberal Democrat leader, is the only leader that I can see who has condemned Elon Musk by name, even though he's called for the overthrow of our democratically elected government. Ed Davey wrote to other leaders calling this a dangerous interference in our democracy. Keir Starmer also issued some remarks, but they're kind of a bit more wishy-washy. They were talking about how Britain would never surrender to far-right protesters who use the English flag as cover for violence and condemn the attacks against police officers. They feel like the kind of things that plenty of prime ministers and leaders have said in the past. Also, just a reminder, it was barely 2 years since I sat in the audience watching Elon Musk next to Rishi Sunak in the building, one of the state buildings next to Buckingham Palace. Yeah, none of that has aged well either.
Not at all. And different tech bros will be feted at a business reception as part of the state visit later this week, which is where we start today. And the CEO of NVIDIA, Jensen Huang, will be alongside. And that marks a big signing on quantum computing cooperation between the UK and the US, linking up defense and advanced computing developments. that is really the line that I think Number 10 would like us to be focusing on, Sam, that there are really big things coming down the line that they would like us to know in that tech cooperation. Now, after a few days spent in a bit of a state, we're going to see Keir Starmer later today in the first announcements anticipating the actual state visit. And the Prime Minister will announce transatlantic cooperation to speed up the building of nuclear reactors, building advanced modular ones in Hartlepool.
That's right. So nuclear, tech, AI, all of those things we'll hear about this week. But, here's something I didn't anticipate, and it's about something that's not going to happen. At the moment, I'm told there are no plans for any kind of announcement on what I thought, frankly, was one of the UK's biggest asks, which is the reduction of tariffs. If you remember, post Donald Trump's return to the White House, we're now in a situation where all goods going to the US from the UK face a 10% tariff, other than those specifically exempted. Steel faces a 25% tariff still, and that's mission critical for this government, not least because of the taxpayer involvement in the Scunthorpe steelworks. And there are lots of tariffs on other slightly random things hitting business all over the place. But I am told that tariffs aren't on the agenda. An announcement about tariffs isn't to be expected and imminent. Now, it's Trump, so I suppose that could change, but that's where the expectations are being set. And I have to say, for all that we're rolling out the red carpet, that doesn't feel like a great result.
I think you're spot on to, if you like, hear that dog not barking. If one can do that, because this was the expectation. And I too have noticed that there is a big switch, Sam, to talking about tech, isn't there? Sort of tech, nuclear, basically anything bar those big asks on steel tariff reduction that we spent a lot of time being briefed was going to be one of the major achievements. As you say, let's see what comes out of the pipe there. But of course, the backdrop to all of this is the government's woes following the sacking on Thursday morning of Peter Mandelson, Lord Mandelson, as our ambassador in Washington. And Sam, we were outlining last time we met why it felt unsustainable, and it was. Hours later, the judgment of the Prime Minister and the new Foreign Secretary, Yvette Cooper, was that Mandelson had to go. And the question's been boiling since is why the PM didn't act sooner. Were there rows around that inside Number 10? Well, Downing Street certainly knew about leaked emails revealing Peter Mandelson's relationship with Jeffrey Epstein from Monday. Starmer was still defending him on Wednesday. And I think that is also in part because it was obviously going to throw up the question of how he got appointed in the first place and whether there were enough caveats and enough rigor in the assessments there. Now, that is the target of the Tories today. Alex Burkhardt is out and about building the case on that and trying to force the release of all the vetting and security details and the warnings that Number 10 appear to have ignored. We had Peter Kyle out on the media round yesterday saying Downing Street knew Mandelson had a strong relationship with Epstein when he was appointed, but that his talent led us to believe at the time it was a risk worth taking. I am not sure that that way of arguing at this point has been helpful, and it certainly seems to have fueled a backlash among MPs. What do you make of that, Sam?
Oh my goodness, no. The risk was worth it. The words of Peter Kyle yesterday. I mean, I think that has struck so many Labour MPs that I was in contact with yesterday as not the right note to take. It is actually in line with, I believe, Number 10's way of talking about this, but my goodness, that feels very hard for some people to stomach. People talking to me about being disgusted with that line. It's been such a remarkable few days since we got back from the summer holiday. I think it's fair to say, and almost no day has gone in Downing Street's favour. It's just been horrendous. And I didn't think it could get worse after the departure of Angela Rayner, but it has. MPs and aides tell me that the PM now is properly weakened. And I don't know about you in your conversations, but things like aides have no fear in just absolutely tearing into Downing Street's line. And the despair is pretty palpable. I think one element of the last few days goes above all the others in terms of importance, and it goes like this. As you say, there's an aggressive debate in Number 10 about who knew what last week. The account we've seen from Number 10 involves Keir Starmer defending Peter Mandelson until the moment he sat down on Wednesday evening and looked at the leaked Bloomberg emails and then decided that Peter Mandelson's closeness to Epstein was unsustainable. That's the trigger for the sacking. Right. Okay, that seems fair enough. But my big question is a different one. My big question is, what actually, in factual terms, did the emails that Number 10 claimed were the trigger for the sacking actually tell us that we didn't know? Because I spent the weekend sort of going back through everything that was in the public domain, and most of it is all there. What are the actual facts that you didn't know at the turn of the year when Mandelson was appointed? Well, they're pretty much out there as well. Let me just go through a couple of examples. So, remember, it was the summer of 2008 that Jeffrey Epstein pleaded guilty to soliciting prostitution with a minor, and he subsequently went to jail. Right. Now, the big shocking thing I felt I learned this week was that Epstein was helped by Peter Mandelson after he pleaded guilty. After he pleaded guilty to soliciting prostitution and soliciting prostitution from a minor. Right. That should be a red flag. And the issue is that back in summer of 2023, 18 months before Mandelson's appointment, the FT revealed that Mandelson was accepting hospitality from Jeffrey Epstein while he was in jail in June 2009. So after he pleaded guilty to soliciting prostitution from a minor, the year after, Mandelson was staying at his house while he was in jail. Right, so that's one thing that we knew and was out there before the appointment. And then it turns out that there is a lot more besides that. And you can see this in the bottom third of the Bloomberg article about those leaked emails. So much came out because JP Morgan, the investment bank, prepared a report that ended up being released by a New York court in 2019. So that revealed that in January 2010, Mandelson was helping Epstein meet with British politicians in Davos. And he was helping Epstein with his work, suggesting that Epstein suggested to JP Morgan something about a China conference, right? All of those things, Epstein offering and Mandelson accepting hospitality, Epstein being helped with his business dealings, Mandelson using his political contacts to try and help Epstein effectively clear his name. All of that was in the public domain at the point of the appointment earlier this year. Now, given all of these red flags, surely this means that Keir is now open to the charge of active incuriosity. For what it's worth, I believe Downing Street would say to that the Bloomberg emails revealed a next level of closeness between Mandelson and Epstein, which they didn't know. So they claimed that the language of the emails was materially different to the facts. But facts matter. It's not just vibes. Facts matter. Nevertheless, Downing Street say that if we'd had the Bloomberg emails before appointment, the appointment would never have gone ahead. I wonder whether or not, if the media had been shining more of a spotlight on the things that we did know, which actually, frankly, we didn't, maybe that is a media miss, then we wouldn't. But isn't that the point of internal government vetting? Final thought. Peter Cull's argument, and I think it's a version of Number 10's argument, I believe is fair. They say Peter Mandelson was so exceptional that we felt he was the only person for the job. As Peter says, the risk was worth it. Okay, that's a judgment, but there are other people who I think some people believe could have done the job. One example, Karen Pierce, the predecessor to Peter Mandelson, who was ousted, frankly, by Keir Starmer. She was, as far as I can tell, as in there with the Trump administration as it is possible to get. So there is a case by some that says Mandelson was not the only person who could do a version of that job, and you should have placed higher and greater weight on the risks that were already in the public domain. What do you make of that?
Great summary. So here's what I think on a number of things. I take your point, Sam, that facts matter as well as vibes. But the reason that vibes has been the undoing of Peter Mandelson is, I think, seeing those words, once you've seen black on white, the tone and that tone of really chummy solidarity with Epstein after the conviction. This, for many friends and this huge network of people, transatlantic network of people around Epstein, was a bit of a break point, and it was for many people who knew Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. So I think it does come across as a bit different. I absolutely take your point that if you go to stay in someone's house and you continue to do so, you are continuing the friendship. But it's that supportive tone that I think is doing the job here of really securing the removal. Now, that is the basis. And remember, Keir Starmer is, of course, a highly skilled lawyer, though possibly that could have been put to better and more rigorous use in the earlier vetting. He will be making the case, and that is why you're getting this noises from around him that this is materially different. I think you're onto something, that it may not be particularly materially different, but it is that deluge of sort of clammy friendship and unconditional support that I think it has really caused this to move along as it has. Now, in terms of Karen Pierce, who I knew pretty well when I was going in and out of Washington, she did not want to leave DC. That is absolutely right, as you describe it. And rather helpfully, she said it to me in a joke on stage, where at the British Embassy, in an interview for Politico, when she said, "Oh, I'll have to be moved out of here by my fingernails." Chuckle, chuckle. But everybody knew what that meant. She did not want to go. A few months later, it was agreed that Mandelson would be her successor. She was very supportive, I should say, in the transition. And the question is why? I don't think it quite works to just say he was so talented. He was like this, one of those unique talent visas that you get if you need to get someone into the US. You claim that their talent is somewhere between Einstein and Beethoven, and in they go. It wasn't like that. It was really that I think number 10, particularly the Prime Minister, and Morgan McSweeney, let's turn to him in a minute, the Chief of Staff, very powerful figure now under fire. I think they wanted to have a sort of political appointee, someone the Prime Minister could talk to in a different way, that he could talk to a diplomat, even one as worldly and seasoned as Karen Pierce. And I think that was really the reason that it happened, as well as the fact that he was deemed to be very good schmoozer and all the rest of it. You're there not only to schmooze, but to stand for the values of your government, and that has become the problem. Many people saying they rather wish Karen Pierce could be brought back from her post in the Western Balkans, or covering the Western Balkans. Perhaps that would be humble pie too much for Keir Starmer, but there she is. Trump, by the way, calls her great lady, and as we know with Donald Trump, that's high praise indeed if you're a random Brit.
Just to pick up on one thing that you said about vibes and facts, I wonder if we need to get back to a bit more like fact-based government rather than vibe-based government. But that's a question for another day. The person who is taking a lot of fire in the last few days, because there's a claim that he didn't pass everything on either at the point of appointment or before Prime Minister's questions to Keir Starmer, is Morgan McSweeney, the Prime Minister's Chief of Staff. How solid is his position, Anne, do you think?
I don't think it's particularly solid. I think all that's solid melts right now in number 10. It would be very damaging, wouldn't it? I'd really like to know what you think about this as well, Sam, for Starmer to ditch Morgan McSweeney. There have been widely reported rumours that they had a bit of a rift last week, which I imagine was just under the pressure of the moment, that McSweeney was still backing, keeping Mandelson, and Keir Starmer was probably going one way and another, and then went against, and that if true as reported, they had a bit of a Barney about that. But it wouldn't be the first time that a chief of staff and a prime minister under pressure had a row. But Morgan McSweeney has become a lightning rod for criticism on the Labour backbenchers and that powerful soft left grouping around Andy Burnham, Lucy Powell, Louise Haig, etc., that there's a culture problem in Downing Street. And I could just point out a dramatic irony-shaped event on the horizon, which is that my colleague Dan Bloom has written for Politico this morning that one of McSweeney's big projects that he's been working on while all of this was about to come out, that he didn't obviously anticipate, was he was busy pitching Starmer as a leader among global progressives, and he's co-authored a piece. Yes, I know. I mean, yes, it is. It is. I don't know how much of a sort of irony alert one can insert into a podcast, but listeners will have picked it up. So there's a big meeting of this global progressive shebang in London next Friday, and I had some experience of this meeting a couple of years ago, because where I did the first interview that I did with Keir Starmer about his foreign policy outlook in Canada. And it's a gathering of the centre-left clans, and everyone was excited still about not wondering what was going to happen in Canada, and Trudeau and Mark Carney, etc. Now you've seen what's happened since Biden was supposed to be the likely next US president, etc., etc. What this shows is that Morgan McSweeney and Starmer are keen to try out this idea of a push that he's an international leader on the centre left. Make of that what you will in the present climate, but there's lots of great stuff in here. It just shows how positioning someone, vibes, as you put it, can be very different to what then just comes out of the raw old world of politics.
Fascinating. Just because we have to say it, the case for defence of Morgan McSweeney is that I am told that he realised Mandelson had to go straight after Prime Minister's questions, and then he left the country to go to Brussels later that day. And that's their sort of way of trying to deny a kind of row between Morgan McSweeney and Keir Starmer. All I'd say is if Morgan McSweeney decided that Keir Starmer should sack Peter Mandelson at, I don't know, 12:45 on Wednesday, why did it take nearly 24 hours for him to do so? Was Morgan McSweeney effectively ignored by the Prime Minister for quite a period of time? It does raise questions about how much the PM listens to Morgan McSweeney and why he isn't in the room a bit more at these critical points. But let's leave that there. The alarm's gone off. 20 and a bit minutes are up. And we were just going to have to see how this pans out, because I think that Keir Starmer's got to get a grip. MPs saying that they're disgusted. They can't believe the tone that Number 10 is taking. Let's see how that pans out when they all arrive in Westminster today. We'll see you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow. Many more episodes, I feel, may feature this.